Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'd like to start this off the wrong way immediately, full screen, with some slides. Who am I? Pictured so you can put a face to a name. Caitlin Cadieux. I work at the Atlantic magazine. I work on our in-house production team, Atlantic Studios. We do a bunch of different editorial video for the Atlantic. So we do documentaries, we do hosted series about like science, politics, a bunch of different stuff. And we also do a lot of original animations. So that's stuff like animated interviews. We do companion pieces for magazine cover stories, a bunch of different stuff. And I'm just going to flip through a couple stills from different projects I've worked on to show you. We get a lot of creative control, so I get to play around with a lot of different styles. I get to kind of do a bunch of cool different stuff. So I'm also an admin on the Motion Slack, if you've heard of it. If you haven't, you can check it out at motionslack.com. It's just a free online Slack community. You know, there's a bunch of people on it from all different backgrounds. They do like 2D people, 3D people, people who have been like in the industry for years and years, people who are pretty new. So it's just a great place to kind of like hang out and help each other out. Fix me. I'm also a moderator on the weekly Twitter chat, MoChat, which you can find out more about at mochat.xyz. In a nutshell, it's just a weekly Twitter chat on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and ET. And there's a preset topic, and just using the MoChat hashtag, we just kind of kick around a conversation for an hour. So just to give a little preface to this talk, I wanted to just go over kind of how easy it is to start adding 3D. I am a 2D person. I went to school for graphic design. I've worked in After Effects way longer than I've worked in Cinema 4D. But over the past couple of years, and more and more in the past year or so, I've started using a lot more 3D in my projects. And it's super accessible and really easy, and you can do a lot of cool stuff. This is there's some stuff I can see that's wrong with this frame, but this, the eyeball in this is 2D, but just adding some 3D stuff, I got to get a little more fun with it, and it just gives you a lot more options. So I want to show you my reel really quickly so you can just see all of that stuff, and then I'm going to show you the project that I'm going to break down for you today. So now I'm going to show you that video that I erroneously pulled up a second ago. And I'm going to let this play just kind of while I'm talking about it. This was an animated interview we did with the author, David Sedaris, last year. And he's talking about how he uses his daily journaling. He's been writing every day in a diary for years and years and years, and that's what he, pulls a lot of his ideas from. So I wanted to use, there's a lot of books, paper, a lot of textury, handwritten stuff, but I also thought it was a great opportunity to do some fun 3D stuff. You can get some cool, three-dimensional paper instead of just, playing around only in the 2D space. So I wanted to show you how I did just a couple of the scenes in this, just a couple 3D things. And I'm going to hop back to the beginning. You're not going to get to see the whole thing. Sorry, y'all. The first thing I'm going to show you is how I made this awesome pencil situation. It's super fast to build this element out, and then I used it several other times throughout this animation because it just gave me a lot of flexibility. So I'm going to show you how I made that, and then I'm going to scroll through here. And I want to show you how I made this guy. I really enjoyed putting this together. I rigged up the eyeballs so they can like pop open and he like blinks. And I'm going to show you how I made these books. So let's just like get in it. So we're going to make the pencil first. I have some like pre-made textures in here, but I want to show you too how easy it is to make textures that work really seamlessly with your 2D stuff, because that's where I'm coming from. You know, we don't have to worry about like messing around with lighting or anything like that. We can keep it really simple. So I'm going to come up here to this like spline menu. I'm going to grab an end side, just drop it in here. And I'm just going to leave this the way it is. I'm going to show you how it looks when it's built out. But another thing that's great about doing 2D style 3D is that you can keep it really simple and it looks really good with your vector graphics. Like, you know, if you have this like geometric style that I frequently work with, it looks pretty good with it. So what I'm going to do with this end side, I'm just going to scale it pretty small. And then I'm going to drop it into an extrude, which I'm going to grab out of this menu. I think if you hold Option while you have this highlighted, it'll drop it in there. And then I'm just going to crank this up. So we already have, like, this is what's going to end up being, like, the main body of the pencil. And it took 2 seconds. So that's really cool. And then what we want to do now is we're going to pull out the lead side of the pencil, and then in the back where the eraser and that the metal piece, the ferrule of the pencil, is going to come out of the other end. But we need to make this editable to do that. One thing I want to do before I do that is with my extrude selected still, I'm going to go into the caps tab, and you check on create single object. And that just makes sure if you don't have that checked on, the caps won't be it won't be like a contiguous piece, and I do want it to be that. So check it on, hit C. We got something. I'm just going to call this pencil as it comes to life. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to pull out this side. What is going on here? Okay, no, it's still working. I don't know what those lines are, but it's a new element. So I'm going to go into my polygon selection tool. I'm just going to select this face, and if I hit D on the keyboard, that'll pull up my extrude tool, and all you have to do is just click and drag it out. And then I'm going to just scale it down. And all we need to do at this point is add another one of these edge loops, and that's going to kind of just delineate where the pencil lead is on this end. So if I hit, I think it's M to pull up this menu, and then hit L, and that's going to give us a loop cut tool. And I'm just going to drop one of those on there. Looking good, looking pencil-esque. Now we're going to come over here. We're going to do the exact same thing, just like some minor tweaks. So I'll hit D for extrude, pull it out, I'll let go, and I'll pull it out one more time. And so that's our eraser, and this is that metal, that ferrule piece of the pencil. So we just want to add a little bit more detail to this segment here, because usually those have like a little bit of like a ridge texture on them. I don't really know how it works in practice, but they have a little more detail there, and we're just going to do it in a simple way. We're going to go back to our loop cut. You just drop a cut on here, and I'm going to go over to number of cuts and make it 2. And then we just want to extrude that out the same way we've been doing everything else. So if you hit U, bring up this menu, and hit L for loop selection, now I can grab the whole loop. I'm going to just hold down Shift and get both of them and extrude them out. Boom. Extremely pencil-esque. So one thing I want to do now, I mean, you know, you don't have to depending on what your animation looks like, but I just want to round the edges of this so it looks like, I don't know, an eraser. You've been, you know, journaling and erasing it. So I'm going to switch to my edge selection, and I'm going to hit U and L to get my loop selection again, and I'm going to grab this loop, and then I'm going to use my bevel tool to super quickly add a little like just curvature on there. So I'm going to right click, go down to bevel, and then I can just come over here and like pull on it. Kapow! And that's pretty much as much like resolution as I need on that. So Here we go. The only thing we have to do now is throw some textures on it, which again, I have a bunch down here, but I'm just going to show you like it's super fast to make these. So if you go to create here and go to new material, it's going to drop in a new one. By default, this stuff is checked on. We don't need it. All we need is the luminance channel. So I'm going to check it on. And then we just make it whatever color we want, a pencil color. And I'll just call this like the wood part of the pencil. And now we will drop these textures on. We'll make polygon selections for where we want those textures to go, and you can just drag them onto the model, and it'll stick. And so I'm just going to come over into my right view to make this a little easier. I'm going to go to my rectangle selection. And, oh, you know what I want to do? I have that. I want to have, you need to make sure only select visible elements is not checked on because we want this to grab polygons to go all the way around. Something to be aware of when you're in 2D and working in 3D. And you want to keep that in mind. And then I'm going to check on tolerance selection so I can just make sure I'm grabbing everything that I want to. So I'm going to drop this lead texture on there. And then you can see it's there. It's happening. It's all coming together. So I'm going to come back over here again. And I'm just going to go down. I'm going to keep doing it. We got this guy. Got the wood here. And I'm going to skip this metal piece really quickly because I just want to show you another thing to keep in mind when you're doing this. Do the eraser. Boom. Awesome. And then, I'm going to select it first and then I'll show you. I'm going to select it like we did with the other stuff. But then with 3D, the way I did that, it's not grabbing these loops that are on the side. So I just want to use my loop selection tool again, hitting U and then L. And just like hold down Shift and grab those. And put our metal on there. And then we have our pencil. Boom. I'm going to hop over really quickly, too, to just show you. I didn't do a lot more with this, but I textured this a little differently. This is what it looked like in the final piece. Like I did a little bit of like striping on that, and I added this inspirational quote that David Sedaris kindly gave us. So that's just what it looked like in practice, and that took like 10 minutes to really throw together. And now you have like a 3D element that you can do a lot of stuff with and bring back over and over again if you want to in your animation from every angle. So now we've done that. I want to go into this part. I had a ton of fun making this guy, so I'm excited to show you. I'm going to start out building this kind of like disembodied head that I made here, and then I'll wrap it up with these bugs. Whoop. So I will just make a new file, and we will start out with a sphere. Very eyeball shaped, like we're pretty much done. So I'm going to call this eyeball. And then I'm going to copy paste this by command dragging up here. It's going to make a copy of the sphere. And so what we're going to do to make those eyelids, we're going to have two hemispheres, one on top and one on the bottom. And we're going to have those animate rotation in opposite directions. And it'll cut out from this original eyeball shape to make this kind of like almond like eye shape that we have going on here. So this will be like the top eyelid. And I'm going to go down into Object and change it to a hemisphere. And I'm going to like crank it up a little bit. Cool. So then I'm going to make this editable because I want to fill in this hole. So I'm going to hit C on the keyboard. I'll just go into one of my point selections. And if you right-click, there is a Close Polygon Hole option. I'm just going to fill that in. No problem. So that's awesome. And then we can just take what we just made there, command and drag it, bottom lid, and then I'm going to come into coordinates. I'm going to flip it around 180 degrees. And one thing I like to do a lot of the time is like I want to keep this zeroed out if I can, just to keep it clean. And so like the numbers kind of like reflect what I want. So I'm going to go down to freeze transformation. I like flip that open. If I hit freeze all, now I have this rotated where I want it, but the rotation is 0 degrees now. So I'll just keep it nice. And what I'm going to want to do at this point, I'm going to set up the the bool system that will let us like cut the top lid and the bottom lid out of the eyeball. It's going to look a little weird while I'm doing it, but it's going to come together really nicely at the end. So I'm going to drop these pieces into a bool, grab a bool out of this menu, and I'm going to take my eyeball, put it in there, and take my top lid and put them in there. And so I'm going to turn off the bottom lid. So if I take this top lid now and I rotate it, you can see it's clipping it out. We're halfway there. So now I want to do the same thing with the bottom lid. And what I needed to do for that was drop this bool with these objects in it and this bottom lid into another bool. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to get another bool, put that in there. It's happening. This is what we want. So it looks a little weird now because when both of these spheres are like rotated together, it leaves this little like disc. And I don't want that, so I'm just going to grab my bottom lid and whoop. If you just move it up a little, it's gone. But I also need to like make it so you can see it. And so now we have something going on. What we want to do now is set up something so where we can animate the rotations of these top lids in opposite directions at the same time, and something that we can like control and animate ourselves. So I'm going to drop this whole bool situation into a null just by highlighting that and hitting Option G. It's a null now, and we'll call it like eyeball control. Cool. And I am going to use a PoseMorph tag to do this. It's so simple to set up, and it's super flexible. And it'll just give us a slider that we can grab, and it'll just totally drive the both rotations. So I'm going to right-click on this null, and I'm going to go to Character Tags. And the PoseMorph tag is right here under Character Tags. So I'm going to drop it on there. And I'm going to check on Rotation. I'm going to hop back in the Basic tab again, and I'm going to check on Hierarchy. So it's like including everything that's inside this null. And then I'm going to go over to the Tag tab. So now we have a base pose, and we have this pose 0. I'll call this blank. I'm going to rename it. And this is so simple to set up. If you have blank highlighted in this PoseMorph tag, so I'm going to go into the bottom lid, and I think like 50 degrees is pretty good. So then if I go back into my PoseMorph tag and I click between them, whoa, it's happening. You can see that basically what this does is it saves a state for this, now it's rotated open. And so you can toggle back and forth and see it. So let's just do it with the top lid. Boom, boom, boom. And this one I want it to be minus 50. It's all coming together. Go back to my PoseMorph tag, see that it's working. Cool. So I'm going to switch from edit in this mode to animate. And now we have our slider. And he blinks all the way out if we close it. And that's all you need to do to set that up. So we've got our blinky situation. Now what we want to do probably is throw a texture on this so it actually looks like a human eye. So I'm going to do what I normally do, drop a material in here, uncheck, uncheck, luminance. Got our white texture, cool. I'll throw them on there. And what we're actually going to do is I used a spline shader in that material to add the pupil. I'm not going to show you how I set it up to animate the pupil looking around because it gets into some espresso, and I don't think we're just not going to have time to fit it in. But I can, if anybody is curious about that later, definitely ask me. It's pretty simple. But just to get it on this eye, in the luminance channel of that material we dropped on in the texture tab, we'll grab this texture, little arrow, we'll go down to effects, and spline texture. So immediately it gets really weird. It's not what we want. It's not eyeball-esque. So we'll click into this. And it defaults to a text spline, so that's why. And you just check text spline off. And it's still not what we want, but we're working on it. What we need to do is drop in a spline that is going to be that shape, the pupil shape. So we can go up to the spline menu, grab a circle, call it pupil. I'm just going to get that out of the way, move him up here, whoop, just so we can see him there. This is what I use as a controller to animate the pupil too, but Just want it to be visible. I'm going to grab this pupil spline and drop it into this spline area. So something's happening now. Now we just need to kind of make some tweaks and adjustments to get it set up right. So in the X and Y offset, we'll put it 50-50 to get this centered. And then it's just really big. So I'm going to crank it down. Let's do 50-50 again for the scale. So now the only thing that I don't like about this, it's not being projected on this how we want, but I also want to fix the color because that's not accurate. So I'm going to check on single pixel, and then I'm going to check on fill. If I go to background texture, drop in a color, kapow, it's done, it's happening. And then we just need to center it up on here, which is really easy to do. So if you go up to the eyeball and you go to the texture tag on it, the projection is just kind of what's how your texture is like mapped onto your object. And I found, if you just go in here and you go to flat, it like immediately centers it all out. So it's very eyeball-esque. I want to crank up. So you can see like the facets on the sphere here. I'm going to go into my eyeball again and like crank up the segments to 50. And then also, there's some jaggedy edges on here. That's something I have on all my projects. But if you go into the render settings, you go into anti-aliasing, and you change this from geometry to best, it looks so much better now. So it's a lot smoother. So now we have our eyeball, and we still have our full blank capabilities. And what I like about that spline shader on here is that if he's getting all like squinty, it just looks pretty natural and it cuts it off. I also want so the back of the eyeball is default texture. In my original animation, you never saw the back of the eyeball, but I'm just going to throw on like a different color on there just in case you wanted to see that intersection. I'm going to do like a weird, I don't know, pink, kind of a gross pink color. And if you put that on here, it's just going to fill that in. So he's looking surprised, but he's looking good. And now I'm going to just drop that pupil spline in here. And so we only have one eyeball. Problem. We want two eyeballs. David Sedaris has two eyeballs. And so we're going to select our eyeball control, and we're going to command and drag it out. Two eyes. Problem solved. I'm going to come in here too and really quickly rename them. So this will be like our right eyeball. I'm just going to put an R there and an L eyeball. And the way I originally set this up, actually, I had them, I didn't have these two separate PoseMorph tags, but I kind of like it this way because now if you want to like wink, you can do that, or you can animate them simultaneously so it's a natural blink. It just gives you more options. So I'm going to center this out. And then I'm going to drop these into a null. They're both highlighted, so I'm going to hit Option G. And then what I want to do, this null is going to be like the rotation and how I animated him like turning his head and looking around. So I want to pull this axis back a little bit so it looks like the rotation's coming kind of from like the center of his head. So I'm going to use my axis tool, enable axis, click this with your head rotation all selected, and just pull it back. Just kind of eyeball it. Thanks, guys. And then, so make sure you check that off again because you don't want to still have your axis tool enabled. And then now, if I like grab this and rotate it around, he's like looking very naturally. It's just like you can't see his head. It's just a weird day for him, but that's looking good. And now I want to give him some glasses. He had some pretty suave-looking glasses that I made. So one thing else that I didn't open this, and I'm going to see if I can. That might be, okay, we'll see how that goes. But since I'm from a 2D background, I find, making shapes in Illustrator to be really intuitive. There we go. And I've been doing it for like, a super long time. Like Illustrator was, one of my first things I started working with in design school. So I made the glasses in Illustrator, and it's super awesome that it is extremely easy to get those shapes into Cinema and start like playing around with them as 3D objects. So what I'm going to use for this That's just its own Illustrator file. And I'm going to use a free plugin that you can get from Cineversity to bring it in. It's called CV ArtSmart. And so I'm just going to go up to, if you have it installed, it'll be in your plugins tab up here at the top. I'll go to CV ArtSmart and grab CV ArtSmart import. Now I'm going to find that in here, drop it in here, and there it is. It's not where I want it to be, but it's looking good. So I'm just going to grab this path, grab the path, and then I'm going to delete this stuff. I don't need it. Come in, zero out the position coordinates. So he's like pretty much where we want him to be. Whoop, move him up. So now he can see much better. That's why he's like, can't see anything without his glasses. So we have this, and now let's just drop it into an extrude. Go up here, option, hold down option, let go. And it immediately, somehow, when I was doing this before, it didn't come out perfect, but it's been happening lately. So that's all we need to do to make this. We'll call these glasses, and we'll drop them into our null. And now all we need to do is texture them, which is also super simple. I like, since you're using these luminant textures, so you can see how you can see the inside edge and like the outside. But if I just drop a luminant texture on there, and it just goes away. And I like to draw attention to the fact that this is like a 3D object. I like to emphasize that. So I want to use like a two-toned look. You can see I did a lighter color on these ones. So you can do that super, super easily, again, with multiple textures. And I'm just going to make 2 textures. Make this black. Cool black glasses. And then I'm going to make another one. Glasses 2. And I want it to just be like a fun color. He's got like some sweet swag, like Ray-Bans, probably, that he got on the show floor. So I'm going to drop these on here. Pull one of the glasses. So you can see now that only one of those textures is showing up. Whichever one is like the rightmost over here is going to override the ones before it. But what you want to do is restrict. I want the black texture to be on the front of the glasses and on the back in case you flip around to the back at any point, which is super easy. So if I just click on this black material up here and I go down to selection, if you type in C1, bam. It's working immediately, and then it's super easy to get it on the back too. All you need to do is command drag to duplicate that texture and go C2, and it'll pop on in the back. So now we have a full head situation. So that's cool. Again, can't see the pupil moving, but I can cover that if anybody wants to know what goes into that. And now it's book time. And then at the end, I'm just going to like throw it all together into one thing. So this was the one thing, I've only been working with cinema for like a couple of years. And I was like, how do I make like a book with turning pages? I want it to look really good. It's pretty challenging. It was really intimidating if you're starting out. So honestly, I was like, how do I fake it? Like I just want it to look good, It's on the screen for a short time. We have fast deadlines. So I'm just going to show you how I made this book and kind of got it to look how I wanted it to look. I'm just going to do it in a new project file, and we'll start out with the humble cube, the workhorse of cinema. Can't believe he hasn't shown up before in my talk yet. I need to go into the object tab, and I'm just going to make it like book shaped. And I don't actually know the dimensions of like a book cover, but I was just like 8.5 by 11. This is super tiny. I'm going to crank him up. But it proportionally, it kind of works out how I want it to. It's like a little too thick. So this is going to be still too thick. This is going to be our book cover. It's going to end up being both of our book covers. And I want like a little more detail on this again. So I'm just going to drop a bevel deformer on it. This is in our deformer tab. Little drop down, and if you come down here, I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to hold down shift, bam. I just want rounded corners. And so that's just a simple way to do it. Whether or not you need that level of detail, it just depends on what you're doing. And I'm gonna make a texture really quickly. It's gonna be like a nice leather bound book cover. very prof. Oh, it didn't. That's my bad. Check on luminance. That's what we need. I'll call this cover. Cool. I'm not going to drop that on just yet. But so now I just want to drop this into a symmetry object. That'll give us 2. Super easy. Come back up into here. Go down to symmetry, option, hold down option. And it doesn't look like anything happened yet, but that's because this cube is sitting on the origin. So you just don't see. If you pull this cube out, oh, 2 covers now. Looks good. And then I'm going to steal this cube. I'm going to command drag it out of there. And I'm just going to use that cube shape. Actually, I'm just going to go into coordinates, zeroed out. And just like scale it way down so it's skinny. And that's just going to be our book spine too. Just want to make sure there's no like seams. Kapow. Call this spine. Call these covers. And the only other thing we need to do with the covers is we want these to be rotated in a little bit so it looks like it's not just like a smashed book. It's like, you know, just like laying open in your hands as you read it. So what I have to do that is I have to make the cube editable because I want to move this axis so I can rotate it from here. I'm going to highlight the cover cube, hit C, and then I'm not going to use this to drag it around. There's a way to be a little more precise. In cases like this, I'm going to go to the mesh menu and go to Axis Center. And if you click Open Access Center, you get this kind of pretty handy menu. So if I want this to be over here on the left-hand side, all I have to do is drag the X over, and then it just jumps over there. Like if I wanted it to be on the other side, vice versa. So it gives you a lot of control. Just hit execute on that. Now it's where I want it to be. And I will rotate it. Not that one, this one. I like to do like 25 degrees. Whoa, that's our book cover. So I'm going to drop it into a null. Nope. I'm going to drop the whole thing into a null. And I'll call that book cover. And then I can just throw this texture on there. And it covers the whole thing. Oh, and I'm also going to, if you would go up to display and change this from Garode shading to Garode shading lines. Sometimes if you're using Lumina texture, you want to be able to see the geometry still. So that just like lets you get a better sense of what your object actually looks like. So now what we have to do is fill this with really good literature, with pages. And I super fake this part. I'm going to use a spline. I'm going to draw kind of the shape of what I want like a block of pages to look like. And I'm going to sweep a rectangle on it. It just makes it one like kind of curved piece of geometry. Kind of cheats it a little bit. I'm just going to draw a spline right in here. And I just want it to look like, you know, really thick books look when they're open and the pages kind of like wave. Just want it to look like that. I think that looks, well, that's not what I want. Looks pretty good. I'm going to scooch this in a little. Cool. So I'm going to flip back into my perspective view so you can see the spline, what's happening here. Now I'm going to grab a rectangle, and I'm going to scale it way down. And you just want it to be kind of smaller than the spine is, and that should work. And then I'm going to grab a sweep, jump it in there, take my rectangle, take my spline, and it's already like pretty much doing what we want. We just need to tweak the size. So if I grab my rectangle in the object tab, we want, height. Boop, 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 boop. There we go. Books, pages. So I'm going to put that in a symmetry too. And then now we have a full-on, it needs to be textured, but you can kind of see what we're going for now. I'll call this like pages. I'm actually going to, because again, I want to do the two-tone thing. I want this like outer edge. I want it to be its own color. So I want to make this editable to make that a little bit easier for me to do. And in the sweep, this gets in the way when I'm trying to make a loop selection that goes all the way around. I don't want it to have this like triangle split here. So if you go into sweep, into caps, I'll do create single object, and I will change the type to quadrangles. And that just cleans it up a little bit. So then I'll hit C on the keyboard, and I'm going to make some textures. We'll do pages 1. It'll be like that weird yellow, like super old book kind of a situation. And then I will make pages 2. This will be that outer edge. I'll just make it a little bit kind of grayer. All right, so I have my 2 textures. I will drop one on directly. And then I want to select this loop. So with my polygon selections, hit U, and then you'll hit L for loop selection. Oh, it's a little hard to see with this this texture on it. See if I can. Yep. Okay. So we got what I wanted, and we just drag pages 2 on there, and then we got kind of that faux book style dimensionality. It looks pretty good for what it is. And now I want to add in this like super fake book turning. And what I do after that too, I animate it turning one time, and then I just loop it. And since you have these luminant textures, it just doesn't stand out. You can't really see it. It just blends right in. So I'm going to make that page with a plane. I'm going to drop a plane in here, rotate it 90 degrees, and bring it up here. It's way too big. We want it to be the size of just like one of these pages. So I'm going to come over here into my front view, and I will drag it over here, and I'm just going to start noodling it in. It was not super precise at the end. Usually I have to come in and delete a few polygons off the side of it. I'll show you that if it comes up. But really, you just have to ballpark it. The height is probably the more important aspect. And we'll just leave it there. I feel like that should be okay. Call this a page turning. So we don't need any of these the horizontal geometry on here. I think that's height. Yeah. To get it to turn, we need it to have this vertical geometry so it actually bends properly, and so we can imitate this wave shape. But I just got rid of all the height segments because we don't need them. And then I just used 2 bend deformers. So I'm going to grab this bend, hold down Shift. It's going to drop it on there. So if I fit to parent, can't really see it right now, but then if I start cranking this up, that's not the look that we want, but you can see that it's affecting it. So let's see if I can rotate this the right way that it will bend. Yes. That feels good when you get it the first time. So cool. So now I'm going to move this around. I want 2 bend deformers on this, 1 on each half, so I can bend them either way and get that wave shape. So again, no, I always forget you can't do that. I'm going to come in here and do it this way. Again, kind of eyeballing it. Just getting it on there. Nice, nice, nice. Maybe a little bit less. And then I'm going to command drag that bend, I think. Yeah, that works too. So now I have 2 animatable bends, and you can get kind of weird with it and get that shape. So that's kind of awesome. So now that I have that set up, I'll just zero those back out again. And I'll take the page. I'm going to scooch it into here, because we just want it to look like it's coming right here at the center where it's turning. And then I'm going to put it in a null. I'm going to put a null there and turn it on there. I just feel like it's easier for me to see what's going on. So I just dropped a null in here, and I'm going to move it. I'll call that page turn. I'm going to put the page into that null. It's happening. So now, too, we have the null axis is right where we want it to be rotating from. So we're just going to do that. Every time we'll crank it over here because we want it to come from this side. And then you just noodle it in. It kind of takes a little bit of dialing in, but really all you want is for it to not draw attention to itself and for it to look like, you see how it's hanging off there? It's not right. Just going to dial it in a little bit more. Oh, that looks okay. And then I'm just gonna grab some of those. See if I can grab some of those polygons. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I have to make it editable. So I'm gonna hit C. Boom, boom. See if we just delete one. What does that look like? And it's like still too much, so I'm just gonna delete another one. Cool. It looks so natural. You can't even tell. I'm gonna drop the page one texture on there, and that way you have no idea. And so then all we need to do is animate it. So I'm going to animate the bends. I'm going to animate both of these bends. Does that grab both of them? Totally does. And then I'm going to animate the rotation on this null. And we'll say it takes like 30 frames for it to come over. And then this is pretty easy. For the other side of the book, all you need is to flip like the positive or negative value of the bend deformer. So it's just like exactly the opposite. So I'll change that one to 46. Change this one to negative 40. And then noodle that back into the right place. And we'll see what's happening. What? That's right. That wasn't like, oh, I'm surprised. Like, it's working. And then I also like to, because that looks kind of stiff, I just like to come to like right in the middle of this animation, and I'm just going to like, you know, when a page is turning and it's like caught by the breeze, you're reading in the park, and I'll just add a little bit of curve there. It looks pretty good, if I say so myself. So now all we have to do is loop that. So we're going to hop into our timeline. If you go to Window Timeline, I'm just going to go into the dope sheet. And so it doesn't have like After Effects has loop out. I know like, you know, a lot of us like 2D people, we know that super well. We don't know how to do that in here. If you grab your object, the stuff that's animating, this is grabbing all those keyframes. This menu will pop up over here. And if you go to After, you change this from constant to repeat. That's basically what it allows you to do. And just crank up the repetitions to, you know, however many you need to see before your scene is over. And it's like see. Endless pages. Just you never make any progress, actually. So that's looking pretty good. Cool. So now all we have to do is kind of like put on the finishing touches. So I'm going to go back. No, I think I'll set up the book cloner in here first, and then I'll drop my Sedaris guy into this file. I'm going to take this whole situation, everything we have built so far, and put it into its own null. And I'm going to call it book to accurately reflect what it is. And I'm going to drop that into a cloner. These are super cool, super easy to use. If you go to the MoGraph menu, you grab a cloner, and you put your book up in there, it starts to get multiple books happening. And then this is super easy to play around with. So what I had them in a circle, so we'll change this from linear to radial. That's looking cool, but like not at all what we want. But you can change the plane to XZ and then drag out this radius, and it's like we're pretty much there. I'm just gonna add, I'll make 7. Give us 7 books. And then I just had them like rotated slightly so David can see anyone just looking around on a swivel. So you just come into the transform and rotate it. I also think I had them angled down slightly just to give you a better visual of it. So you can actually go into the cloner itself. And, can you? What did I do to do that? Yeah, here in the coordinates. That's what. Boom. Books. Oh, and here's another thing, just to add a little bit of detail, because like this way all the pages are turning at the same time. Boring. I'm going to add a random effector. So if I have my cloner selected and I go to MoGraph, effector, random, you can do a lot of random stuff with this. I mean, right now, like it defaults to position and it's kind of bumping these things around. Like, what? But you can also just check that off, and if you go to time offset, that just like randomizes how this animation is happening over time. I'm actually going to put in a negative number because I want it to start happening before my animation like is starting. So I'm going to put in like -25, and then see. Now we have some true variety. Cool, cool, cool. I'm going to grab my Sedaris guy, just copy and paste. Ooh, my eyeball texture. Yeah, it came over. Okay. And he's huge. Way too big. So you just scale him down, and then you can start animating. So whoop, whoop. Reading his stuff, you know, like he's like, I don't know about that one. That one's not good. Oh, that was something funky's going on with that, and I don't know what it is. And I'm sorry. If you want to help me figure it out after, I'll be here. And I just want to show you what the final scene looked like. I streamlined this quite a bit, so it's a little bit of a messy file. But just so you can see, you know, what he looked like with his pupils moving around, and he's popping in. And I had some different colors on here. But that's it. We got our whole scene going. So thank you so much for coming, checking this out. Again, I'm Caitlin Cadieux, and I hope you guys learned something and want to jump in and do this.